Okay, so today I'm going to show you how to do a cluster stitch. Can be called a puff stitch as well, but actually closer research told me that a cluster stitch is based around a US terms double crochet, and a puff stitch is basically the same thing, but it's based around a half double crochet. So this one is a cluster stitch, and I will do another video with the puff stitch, but they're really similar. So this is what we're aiming for. In the end, as you can see, there's each one of these is a cluster of stitches made up using the principle of a double crochet. So you can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then again 6 along there. So I'm going to show you how to turn and build up the row. So I'm going to start with a chain. Now I'm going to start with 11 on my chain. That's because when I go back, before we actually start the cluster stitch, you can go straight into the chain if you want, but I prefer to do some single crochet. So I'm doing 12, so that I've then got 11 stitches, because when I single crochet along, I need to miss the first chain. So I'm doing 12 chains to start. How many you do along the bottom does depend on how many chains you need to miss to start your stitch. So if you're going to do a single crochet, then you need to have one extra chain to how many stitches that you want. So I'm going to do 12. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. Now, so I want to have 11 stitches. You need an odd number to do this, and I've done chain 12 because I'm going to miss the very first chain from the hook. So I'm going to miss that one out, and I'm going to go into the second chain from the hook, and I'm just going to do single crochet along. Obviously I use US terms, so I'm going to just single crochet along here, and that should then give me 11 stitches, because you need an odd number to be able to do the clusters across the full row and to get them looking tidy at the ends. So here we go. So now we get into the last one. Right, so I'm going to start with, I'm going to turn, and I'm going to have a chain 2 to start with. You can chain 2 or chain 3, it depends what you prefer. It depends on the height of your stitch as well. So it's based on the principle of a double crochet. So we double crochet, or we start off going into our next stitch, and we carry on in this stitch until we move on to the next one. So we're just going to work in this very first stitch at first. So we yarn over just like you would a double crochet and go into your stitch, and then you yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops on your hook, which is exactly what you would do with a double crochet. But we're not going to finish it off by yarning over and pulling through the remaining 2 stitches, the remaining 3 loops, on your hook. We're going to do that process again, and we're going to do it. I prefer to do a cluster stitch with about 5 loops, ending with 5 loops on my hook. But your pattern that you use or your personal preference will tell you how many. It means we go into it 4 times. So I've done 1, yarn over, back into the same hole, yarn over, pull through, and then just working on these front 2 loops, yarn over and pull through again. And now we've increased how many loops we've got on our hook. So we need to do it twice more so that I end up with 5. Yarn over, back into that same stitch again, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and again we're just working with the front 2 loops on the hook. And now we've got 4, so we're going to do it one more time. Yarn over into that same hole with the stitch, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over and pull through the first 2 again. So now you can see you're building up a cluster of stitches here, and basically a cluster of double crochets. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops left on our hook, and now we need to yarn over and pull through all 5 in one go. I find it helps to pull down the stitch with my left hand just to give me enough room to get that hook smoothly through. And then we finish off the stitch with a chain. So just yarn over and pull through that loop just to finish it off nicely. Now we need to not do the next cluster in the next stitch because it becomes too tight and it'll bend your work. So as you can see on this example, I've done one and then I've left a stitch. I've done one and then I've left a stitch. So we skip the next stitch of our single crochet on the bottom and we move to the next one along. So we're skipping this one here and we're moving to this one here. So we do the same again, yarn over and into the same stitch, into that stitch, yarn over, pull through the first two, but don't finish it off, yarn over, into the same stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over into the front two loops, and we do that twice more, yarn over again and pull through the front two, and then once more. If you wanted to only do it 3 times, that's fine as well, so you end up with fewer, or you can do more to get more loops. It depends on how big you want your stitch to be. And then again we're going to pull through all 5. Now we've got 5 loops. We're going to I pull down a little bit to make room, as you can see, just to pull that down, and I pull through all 5 in one go, and then I'm just going to finish it off with a chain. And we miss the next stitch and we're going to do exactly the same in that stitch. Yarn over, pull through the front two, yarn over, back in, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over, pull through the front two on the hook. It's exactly the same, and you just keep going along your row like that for your very first row. And then we'll do the last one. And yarn over, pull through. So I've got 3 clusters. I want to do 3 more. Don't forget to chain at the end. So I'm going to skip the next stitch. Just want to do 3 more to finish off, so that we end up with 6. Obviously, if you're doing a blanket or something, you will need a lot more chain at the bottom. But just make sure that you have the right amount of chain, taking into account that you have to skip some when you first start your stitch, because you don't want to be left with like a straggly bit that doesn't fit. And you need an odd number to get the cluster stitches to align at the edges, because basically you end up with 6 cluster stitches and 5 gaps in between each one. So we're on the last one now, so I've got 2 stitches left, so we're not going to use that one. We're going to go into this very end one here, and then I'll show you how to do a turn and how to work along the second row. Two, 3, and then 4. Pull through all of them, and then we chain as normal. Okay, now I've done 1 chain to finish that off there, and you need 2 or even 3 if you wanted to before you turn. It's up to you. See what feels best for you. You don't want it to pull in. When you turn the stitch out, you can see that it has like a bump on the other side. So you might want that to be your front of your work, or you might want that to be the front of your work. It's flatter. It's up to you what you prefer. If you want something to have that textured shape, that can end up being the front side of your work. Like I say, it's entirely up to you. So when we do a turning chain, we need to make sure, a turning row, sorry, we need to make sure we've got enough chains at the end. Now, I don't think that's enough height for me, so I'm going to do 3 chain there. So I've got the chain that finished off the stitch plus another 2. And in this time, instead of actually working into any of these stitches along, you work directly into the hole that's created from in between each stitch. That's why you need to have that extra chain after each stitch, after each cluster, so it gives you those holes. If you have a look at the one that I've completed, you can see how I've gone into each gap in between the stitches, and it gives you that, it gives it a little bit of a zigzag. There are ways that you can get it so that there's one on top of the other, and that might be something for a future video. Okay, so we're going to do exactly the same now, except all we're going to do is work into each hole. So yarn over and then into the hole, pull through, yarn over and pull through the first two. It's exactly the same, still just working on those front 2 loops. Okay, and this is my last one, so still got 5, and then pulling through all 5 and then chaining, and that gives us that little bit of extra length to the stitch so that I can reach the next hole. So moving on to the next hole, yarn over, and be just still concentrate just on pulling through those first 2 loops and yarning over each time until you've got 5 on it. If you want to just do 4, so you stop when you've just got 4, or you want to move on and you want to do 6 to make it even chunkier, that's entirely up to you. If you're following a pattern for a cluster stitch, it will usually tell you if it wants you to do it where you've got 4, 5 or 6, whatever, however many, to get the look of whatever the item is that you're working with. Okay. So, nearly done. This is my 4th one, and then the last one, the 6th one, is a bit different. So I will just make sure I get to the end so I can show you that. As you can see, it's growing quite nicely now. Okay. So I've got 5, 4, 5, and then the last one, you see that there isn't a hole, so where do you go into now? If you pull at the side, you should be able to find where you've got your chains. So you chained 2 or 3 at the side, and then you've got the start of your cluster stitch. So if you pull, you can actually see that there is a gap there in between the chain, the turning chain, and that stitch. So that's where you're aiming for. So you need to yarn over and you need to find that hole. And then you just do the same thing, but it's a little bit more, it's a bit harder to identify than the other ones, but it is there as long as you've made sure that you do that turning chain. And that's where we go into. So that will be the same at the end of every row, because every row you always start with a turning chain. And we go, and then one more, and pull through. And there we go. So they're basically the 2 rows that you need. And then you can just carry on and work as many as you want and build it up as much as you want. So that's how you do a double crochet cluster stitch.